Hello everyone, it's Rafael Gutierrez. Welcome to my channel, and I hope everyone's safe with the virus COVID-19 that's going around. Today I'm actually going to talk about the humerus, and you can see my cartoon drawing there. And what you're seeing is, you're actually seeing, well, this one would be an anterior view of it. So if I were standing like this, the humerus is right here, and that's what you're technically looking at. And I'm going to see if I can get the light a little off. Oh, nope, that looks like the best it's going to be. So, big thing about this is, if you notice, I've actually started with the fingers. And what I've used on the fingers, palm of the hand, and wrist, should help you understand the bones of the arms, the forearm. And those bones are actually going to help you understand the humerus. And the humerus should help you understand a little bit of the scapula and clavicle, which I'm hoping to do next time. And we'll mention a little bit of the ribs, but the truth is the arm is pretty much just these areas, but they do require the ribs and vertebrae actually to move around. I won't talk about the vertebrae too much until I get to it. After I finish the arm, I will do the leg, and what I've done to help people understand what I've done with the arm should help you understand the legs, especially when you get to the toes and ankles. Now, a lot of times we actually do use directions. So we actually will sometimes talk about it's in the radial aspect here or ulnar aspect. But over here we can also talk about medial and lateral. Medial would be going to the midline. Now as you see the head pointing that way, that's, by the way, is called the head of the humerus. It's telling you that this is a medial side here. This entire area is a medial side. That would mean that this is a lateral side, the outside part. So the humerus does have certain things that we do want to look at. One I've already mentioned, which is a head. This is a head. And I'm erasing this in the drawing here. And this is a head. You also see that there's a line here. Now, I'm showing the front and the back, the anterior portion of the posterior. You see an area here which is called the anatomical neck. Anatomically, it looks, if you think of this as a head, that would be the neck, right? And next to it, you have these two big lumps. Now, up here, this one here is called the greater trochanter, greater tubercle, and this one here is a lesser tubercle. If you notice, the lesser tubercle is in front of and pretty much medial to the greater tubercle. Now, I'm going to actually show you something. If you go to this little area here, where your pectoralis, your deltoid, and your clavicle come together, you have a little triangle right here, subclavicular triangle. And if you rotate around, feel around, you'll feel a little bump. There it is. A small bump here, and then as you rotate inward, you'll feel a bigger bump. So you'll feel two bumps here. What you're feeling is the first one, the smaller one, is the lesser tubercle. The bigger one, the greater tubercle, comes next. And you can feel it just by going like this. You'll feel 1, 2, 1, 2. And so that's actually what they call the proximal end as well. You will notice that you have a shaft and you have a little bump right here. That bump is known as the deltoid tuberosity. You know your deltoid here. That will insert onto the deltoid tuberosity. And you have a great radial line here, which we won't talk about. And then you get to these two structures here. Now, this looks a little bit like a head, but instead of using the word head, we are going to use the capitulum, which capitulum means head. And then this thing here is called the trochlea. The capitulum is the round one, trochlea is down here. Now, what's neat about that is, if you remember where we talked about the radius on the ulna, the radius comes over here. Comes here. The ulna is here. And it has a little spine here. The spine that the ulna has is known as a coronoid. And so the coronoid is pretty much hooking on to the trochlea. As you see a little groove here, as the radius goes into it, that's a radial fossa. I don't know if you can read that, but it's radial. Fossa just means a little groove. So you have the radial fossa, and over here, you have the coronoid fossa, where the coronoid goes in. Over those two rounded structures, we have two things called the epicondyles. If you remember your fingers, they actually did have condyles, which are the where the heads are. Well, those look kind of like pretty much knuckles, so they call them the areas here epicondyles. Those are actually really important clinically, and I'll talk about them a little bit. They are areas where muscles will come around to work on your forearm and fingers. What people actually forget is you don't really have muscles in your fingers, you have tendons. They're pretty much the leather that muscles are attached to, which come in here. The only places you do have muscles are in these two little lumps here and between the bones of your hands, which we'll talk about later. Now, if we were to turn this around, I have the picture here, your ulna would also be here. And it has a big lump here, like that. Radius would still, again, be just floating over here. And so, as we have a little fossa here, a graying area I throw in, that's called your Olecranon Fossa. It goes in. Now, here's actually something kind of interesting. If you look at that area, it tells you that the ulna comes in, and it's actually your tip of your elbow. It goes into that area and kind of locks on. That means that, for instance, if someone's doing an arm bar and someone's pulling, the force is actually going to be around the olecranon. And that can end up causing a lot of problems because it can actually tear certain areas of here, such as the epicondyles. Otherwise, you can also break the olecranon off, by the way, but the epicondyles can actually be broken by that and also by the strain of the tendons and ligaments on them. So if you're trying to fight something, sometimes it actually you can end up doing damage, enough damage you can break those. The only other way to break those is through really severe trauma. For instance, I knew someone who was riding a bicycle, fell, and he actually broke the olecranon and the medial epicondyle as well. It was a pretty bad fall. Otherwise, most of the fractures here really take a lot of energy unless you have osteoporosis. So that's actually what our ulna is, and I know it's a pretty short video, and I'm going to move this over here for now because I figure I can talk a little bit about what comes here. I'm just going to erase this to give you a preview. One of the things that happens a lot of times is with the ulna is people can actually pull it out of the socket. Sometimes you hear people having rotator cuff injuries. What happens is this area here, the shoulder joint, has a little bit of cup here. The cup is actually called the glenoid fossa. And that actually goes into the scapula. I'm trying to figure out the best way. So here you'd have a line here. And you also have a little hook like here. And a little projection coming off this way, which comes this way. So I'm going to turn this around. And you can see my beautiful kitchen. Not yet. So, one of the things that happens is, I'm going to make this a little better. Well, actually, I'm just going to leave it like this for now because you're going to be back next week, right? And what happens is, this area here, that's how this joint is actually held. It has some ligaments and tendons coming around here. But if you notice, that's a pretty weak joint. And so when you hear people dislocating their shoulder, that's why. Now, when you get into muscles, we will talk about the rotator cuff muscles, which are the muscles that actually hold the humerus in place. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm glad you were able to spend 10 minutes with me. Maybe you were just looking for something else and you figured you came in here and it was better than sitting around and watching something you've seen before 100 times. I hope you enjoy this and survive the isolation stage that most of us are in. Have a nice day.